Hello, I'm Colin Gallagher, CEO at Onward and Upward, and you're listening to the Association 100 podcast, where each week we interview association leaders from across the country to hear how they're trying new things, taking big risks, and delivering value for their members. We'll explore the realities of what it means to work in and with associations and bring you the insights and inspiration you need to advance your career and make big changes at your association. Let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of the A100 podcast. I'm Meghan Henning, and I'm your host for today. I'm recording on the show floor during ASAE's annual conference here in Cleveland, and I'm very excited for today's conversation. My guest today is Margaret Vitullo, Executive Director of the Linguistic Society of America. She is an experienced leader in higher education and association management with a history of demonstrated success in building innovative programs, projects, and teams. She currently serves as the Executive Director, and we're very excited to have you. Welcome, Margaret.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here today.
Tell us a little bit about the Linguistic Society of America.
The Linguistic Society of America is a scholarly society whose mission it is to advance the scientific study of language. We just celebrated our centennial, so we've been around for 100 years. Most of our members are faculty and students who are either teaching or studying linguistics in colleges and universities. About a third of our membership are based outside of the United States. And it is a wonderful organization full of marvelous, caring, deeply thoughtful people. And it's also an organization that has gone through some real difficulties as it is now entering its second century and really struggling to find its feet when so much has changed about the association world.
Can you tell us about some of that?
Sure. For scholarly societies, the business model is really what's often referred to as the three-legged stool. There are three main revenue sources, which are membership, meetings, and publications. And in the current environment, all three of those sources of revenue are threatened for scholarly societies. With cuts in higher education, our members sometimes can't afford to become members, and they often can't travel to our meetings. Publications, with more and more emphasis on open access, means that our publications revenue is also being cut into. And now that everyone gets all of their publications online, it used to be that the only way for you to have your scholarly journal in your home was to be a member of your scholarly society and get the journal delivered to your home. But now your institutional library can deliver that to you on your iPad or your computer. And your essential link to your scholarly society has gone away. Scholarly societies are really in a place where they need to figure out what their new model is. And the mantra of finding non-dues revenue is particularly challenging for scholarly societies because all of our members or most of our members have PhDs. So their sense of needing continuing education is really quite different. And we don't certify in the way some other, like the American Institute of Architecture. We don't have ongoing certification. So it's a really challenging environment for scholarly societies.
Yeah, it sounds that way. But I know that you are involved in what is called a fractal approach to leadership, which is something I had to Google. So can you tell us about that?
Let me just quickly say that all is not doom and gloom. I will get to explaining fractal leadership.
Okay.
But I've been at the LSA now for 16 months. In those 16 months, we've launched a new website and member database. We have had a successful centennial celebration with record-breaking attendance and record-breaking fundraising. We have revitalized our webinar program, and we are offering virtual programming at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. We've launched new funds to support members. We have a new Centennial Student Fund and a new Indigenous Scholars Fund. We have launched membership renewal and onboarding automated campaigns. And with full membership support, we actually increased dues by 30%.
Wow.
We've made a lot of progress. Are we there yet? No. Are we going to get there? Yes, we will get there. There are wonderful, committed people at the Linguistic Society of America, and we will get there. But this brings me to fractal leadership. Now, bear with me for a moment. You Googled it already. So you've seen that fractals are these incredible swirling images that are just mind-blowing to look at. And what they really are is a complex form made up of repeating smaller forms from the biggest picture. And if you expand and expand and expand and go further and further, closer and closer to that image, you'll see that the big image you saw is repeated in every part of the smaller image.
It was very cool.
Yeah, they're really amazing. So the times that we live in call for a different kind of leadership. And we need to build a sense of belonging and community and shared responsibility. And there is lots of great inspiration for this. Some of my favorites are the Xander's book, The Art of Possibility, Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead, Robert Livingston's book, The Conversation. But how do we enact the amazing insights that are in those books? That's where the image of fractal leadership comes in. If we want to create a sense of community and shared responsibility, then we need to reflect those values at every level, from the smallest level to the largest level, in our own lives. If there is shared responsibility and community, we need to be able to ask for help. We need to be able to realize that we don't have to carry the world on our shoulders or our association on our shoulders, and look around for the group that comes with us every day in our elected leadership, in our volunteers, and be aware of them and work with them. In our staff meetings, who's running the staff meeting? How is the agenda getting set for the staff meetings? At LSA, we have a shared space, and every member of the staff builds the agenda and can add things to our staff meeting agenda. We take turns in terms of who's leading at any given time. Our last staff meeting happened in someone else's office because that person had the kickoff item for our staff meeting.
That's amazing. And I also think that having been a part of the association world, it allows the staff to really take into account what is happening. And it gives them more of a sense of, as silly as this might say, of belonging, of understanding the importance of what they're doing and then who they are within the organization, right?
Exactly. Community, belonging, and shared responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing happens with committees. If you really work to empower committees, bring the responsibility and the power as many levels down as you can. David Marquet's book, Turn the Ship Around, is a fantastic inspiration for this. He talks about taking an atomic submarine that was the worst in the entire fleet and turning it into the best in the entire fleet. And the way he did it was by bringing responsibility and power as far down in the system as you can. This also fits in with this idea of fractal leadership. Rather than having a big leader at the top who's responsible for everything and everyone looks to that person, if we have shared community and belonging and shared responsibility, then that goes down to every level. You're bringing the responsibility and the power and that sense of belonging to every level, to each individual member, to the committees, to the board, to the staff. And then for the leader, for me, I have a practice of meditation that helps me stay safe. 3 times a day, I stop or at least I try to. I don't always succeed, but my goal is 3 times a day to close my door and spend 5 minutes meditating. And one of the things I tell myself every time I stop is I am not alone. I am not doing this by myself. So at the smallest level, at one point, that gives me freedom to relax and to breathe and to allow inspiration to come in.
I was just going to say, I would think that would bring inspiration, because when you're filled with stress or anxiety or fear, it's not as if you're at your best. Even though when people who do thrive on stress, I know that they're out there, but it doesn't allow that. Knowing that you aren't alone, that the whole thing doesn't rest on your shoulders, would allow you to be able to take some risks, to think of new ideas, to try something and not think, what if this fails? What will happen to me? And I feel like that in the past several years, that it has been forgotten in some respects, right? Because you do think then everyone will remember that it was me that thought this up. And therefore, the lesson you're teaching yourself is please don't ever have another original thought, which nobody wants. So I think that is great. Can you share some specific examples of how this approach has led to success for you?
The 2 examples that come to my mind when I think of success for me, right? If it's shared community and it's shared responsibility, it's also shared success.
Yes.
Right? For example, our organization has been very traditionally focused on our academic members, those that are in the colleges and universities. And a group of linguists who are working outside of academia have been talking about, where are we in this association? Where's our place to belong? And they came to me and we started talking about, all right, what would it look like to create a space at the annual meeting for all of the linguists that are working in industry and in nonprofit organizations and in government to have a place? These are folks who aren't writing scholarly articles that are going into journals. The reward system is quite different. But the insights, bringing linguistics out into the world, is incredibly exciting. If you asked Siri to give you the directions to the convention center, then you were enjoying the fruits of linguists. Right? If you asked Alexa to turn on your music this morning, you were enjoying the fruits of a linguist who was working in collaboration with a computer scientist, right? But this is some of the really exciting ways that linguistics is out in the world. So we together, as we were talking about how do we create a shared space, we came up with a brand new component for our annual meeting. It's going to be happening for the first time in January of 2025, called LEXING, which stands for Linguistics in Industry, Nonprofit, and Government. And we're going to have lightning lectures, lightning talks that are 5 minutes long. We're going to have fishbowl discussions. We are using brand new forms that are completely different than the way scholarly talks normally are structured, because this is a whole out of the box, a different way of thinking. And when we all sat down together to talk about this, and this incredible group of vibrant and creative people said, Margaret, we want to do all of these things that you've never seen done before. And I looked at this group and thought, okay, community, belonging, shared responsibility, it is all here around this virtual table. Let's make this happen.
I love that.
And the response has been overwhelming. We have had so much enthusiasm.
That's great. And I loved that you mentioned Alexa and Siri as being part of the linguistic
enterprise.
Yes, because that I would not have thought of that. But your mission is to advance the scientific study of language while supporting your members. And so how is the fractal leadership? It sounds like it's going to create a very strong sense of community among your members, because it allows for a space for all of them. So the feeling of there's just no room for me. I'm old, I'm young, whatever the case is, that is not going to exist, which is really interesting because this is the very first time I've heard of this. And yet what you're saying, not that it's common, but of course people would want a sense of belonging. And so it's such an interesting concept that I don't really think a lot of people know about. So how did you embark on this? How did you hear about it?
I made it up.
I love it.
I've been entranced by fractals for decades. I used to talk about fractal teaching when I was a professor. And as I've been I've been involved in the association leadership space for about 15 or 16 years now since I left academia. And I've been thinking about, what am I trying to do? I have a very strong sense of how I lead, but I was engaged in a conversation with a wonderful colleague who said, okay, how would you characterize it? And I ended up saying, I think it's fractal leadership. This is how I would characterize it. And you're absolutely right. With a fractal leadership approach, inspiration and value happens at every level. So age does not determine insight, and experience does not determine essentiality. That at every level, there are people who have lessons to bring and gifts to offer, and who are valued and valuable. And how do we create a sense of shared belonging, community, and shared responsibility that permeates to every level? And really in the association world, and if we're going to think about how are we going to transform scholarly societies to figure out how to overcome the problems of the three-legged stool business model, we have to become a place where people feel, I belong because I want to be here, not because I have to be here. And I want to be here because me being here makes a difference. And I want to make a difference in the world with my scholarship and my knowledge production. And I see it as something that has potential to reinvigorate scholarly societies.
I think this has the potential to reinvigorate lots of different areas. So I think this is amazing. What an amazing conversation. Thank you. Now we wrap up every podcast with some lightning questions that are just for fun, just so our listeners can get to know you a little bit better. Where did you grow up?
In Houston, Texas.
What's your Starbucks order?
Grande latte, oat milk.
If you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still work?
Oh, yes.
I've yet to meet anyone who says no. I think this is a sign of great leaders. What's the last show you binge watched?
Call the Midway.
Food you can't live without.
Black beans and rice.
Get that from your Texas, right? And what's your bucket list travel destination?
What's not on my bucket list travel destination?
That is my answer too.
So many places I want to go that I haven't had the privilege to visit yet.
Well, this has been really wonderful. I've totally enjoyed this conversation, and I really feel like we heard it first, listeners. The Fractal Leadership started here. So thank you so much for making the time to talk to us and sharing this amazing new idea. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Megan.
That's a wrap for today's episode. The Association 100 podcast is a production of Onward and Upward Marketing and Communications, where our mission is to make associations and nonprofits the go-to source in their industries through earned media and thought leadership. This podcast is an extension of the A100 newsletter, a bi-monthly collection of best practices, top trends, helpful ideas, and smart strategies delivered straight to your inbox. Have you undertaken a big change at your association, or do you have some words of wisdom for the trenches of association life? We want to hear from you, and so do our listeners. Drop us a note at info@onwardupward.com. That's info@onwrdupwrd.com. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and share with your friends and colleagues. We're available anywhere podcasts are found. Come back next week for more association inspiration and insights. Thanks for tuning in.